Picture this. A small girl sits quietly beside her beloved doll in 1907. The photograph seems innocent enough, capturing a moment of childhood simplicity from over a century ago. But when modern researchers decided to examine this image more closely, using advanced digital enhancement technology, they discovered something that would send chills down their spines. What they found hidden in the details of this seemingly harmless photograph would challenge everything we thought we knew about this little girl's story. The discovery began when Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a digital forensics expert at Columbia University, was working on a project to restore old photographs for historical preservation. Her team had received dozens of images from private collectors and museums, all dating back to the early 1900s. Most were straightforward family portraits or street scenes, typical of the era. But this particular photograph caught her attention for reasons she couldn't initially explain. The image showed a girl who appeared to be around 8 years old, dressed in the formal attire common to wealthy families of 1907. She sat on an ornate wooden chair in what seemed to be a well-appointed parlor. Beside her sat a porcelain doll, equally well-dressed, with delicate features painted in soft pastels. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual about the scene. Children posing with their favorite toys was a popular subject for photographers of that time period. Dr. Mitchell began her standard enhancement process, adjusting contrast and sharpening details that had faded over the decades. As she worked on the image pixel by pixel, she noticed something odd about the doll's eyes. They seemed unusually lifelike, almost too realistic for the manufacturing techniques available in 1907. She decided to zoom in further, increasing the magnification far beyond what would normally be necessary for restoration work. What she saw made her step back from her computer screen in shock. The doll's eyes weren't painted porcelain at all. They were real human eyes, complete with blood vessels, iris patterns, and the subtle moisture that only living tissue could produce. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. As she examined the image more closely, she realized the doll's skin had an almost flesh-like quality that no porcelain could replicate. Dr. Mitchell immediately called in her colleague, Professor James Hartwell, an expert in Victorian-era photography and historical artifacts. Together, they spent hours examining every detail of the photograph using the most advanced imaging software available. What they discovered would fundamentally change their understanding of this seemingly innocent family portrait. The doll, they realized, was not a doll at all. It was another child, a girl who appeared to be slightly younger than the one sitting beside her. The child had been positioned to look like a porcelain toy, but careful examination revealed the subtle rise and fall of breathing, the slight tension in muscles, and other signs of life that no manufactured object could possess. Professor Hartwell began researching the photograph's origins. Through painstaking detective work, he traced it back to the Blackwood family estate in rural Massachusetts. The Blackwoods were known to be an eccentric wealthy family, with a reputation for unusual practices and secretive behavior. Local historical records mentioned strange rumors about the family, but most had been dismissed as gossip from jealous neighbors. The girl in the chair was identified as Margaret Blackwood, the eldest daughter of industrialist Robert Blackwood. But who was the child posed as a doll? This question led the researchers down a dark path that would reveal one of the most disturbing family secrets in American history. Through examination of census records, birth certificates, and family documents, they discovered that the Blackwoods had adopted several children over the years, but these children were never seen in public and rarely mentioned in family correspondence. The researchers began to suspect that these adopted children were being used for the family's twisted entertainment purposes. Further investigation revealed that Robert Blackwood had developed an obsession with creating the perfect family portrait. He believed that children should be seen and not heard, and took this philosophy to disturbing extremes. The adopted children were trained from a young age to remain perfectly still for hours at a time, posed as dolls and toys in family photographs and social gatherings. The technique used to achieve this effect was both cruel and sophisticated. The children were given mild sedatives to help them remain motionless, then positioned using hidden supports and restraints. Their faces were painted with special makeup to give them the appearance of porcelain, and their eyes were treated with drops that created an unnaturally glassy appearance. Dr. Mitchell's team discovered evidence of this practice in several other photographs from the Blackwood collection. In image after image, they found what appeared to be dolls and mannequins that, upon closer inspection, were actually living children forced to pose as inanimate objects. The psychological trauma inflicted on these children must have been immense. The most chilling discovery came when the researchers found a diary belonging to Margaret Blackwood herself. In it, she described the horror of watching her adopted siblings being transformed into living dolls for her father's photographs. She wrote about their fear, their pain, and their gradual loss of identity as they were forced to spend days at a time without moving or speaking. One entry, dated just 3 months after the photograph was taken, described how one of the younger children had suffered a complete mental breakdown after being forced to pose as a toy soldier for an entire week. The child never spoke again and was eventually sent to an asylum, where he died less than a year later. The diary also revealed that Robert Blackwood justified these actions by claiming he was creating art that would preserve childhood innocence forever. He believed that by turning children into living dolls, he could capture their pure essence and protect them from the corruption of the adult world. In reality, he was destroying their childhood and inflicting trauma that would last their entire lives. As word of the discovery spread through academic circles, other researchers began examining similar photographs from the same era. They found that the Blackwood family was not alone in this practice. Several wealthy families in the early 1900s had participated in what they called living art, using children as human props in elaborate staged photographs. The practice was particularly common among families who had made their fortunes during the Industrial Revolution and felt a need to demonstrate their sophistication and artistic sensibilities. They would host elaborate parties where guests could admire their collections of living dolls, never knowing that they were looking at traumatized children forced to play roles against their will. Dr. Mitchell's team worked with law enforcement historians to document these cases and bring attention to this forgotten chapter of American history. They discovered that many of the children used in these photographs had been taken from orphanages or purchased from desperate families who couldn't afford to care for them. The legal system of 1907 offered little protection for these children. Adoption laws were minimal, and child labor regulations were virtually non-existent. Wealthy families like the Blackwoods could essentially do whatever they wanted with children in their care, as long as they kept their activities private. The psychological impact on survivors was documented through letters and medical records found in various archives. Those children who lived to adulthood often suffered from severe mental health issues, including what we would now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder. Many never learned to form normal relationships or trust other people. Margaret Blackwood herself became an advocate for children's rights later in life, using her family's wealth to support orphanages and campaign for stronger child protection laws. Her diary suggests that the guilt over her family's actions haunted her until her death in 1967. The enhanced photograph that started this investigation has become a powerful symbol of child abuse hidden behind a facade of respectability. It serves as a reminder that even in seemingly innocent historical images, there may be dark secrets waiting to be uncovered by modern technology. Museums and historical societies have begun re-examining their collections of early 20th century photographs, looking for similar evidence of this disturbing practice. Several institutions have already identified suspicious images and are working with researchers to investigate their origins. The story of the Blackwood family photograph demonstrates how advanced imaging technology can reveal truths that were hidden for over a century. It also highlights the importance of protecting children from exploitation, regardless of the social status or wealth of their guardians. Today, the original photograph is kept in a climate-controlled archive at Columbia University, where it continues to be studied by researchers working to understand the full extent of this historical tragedy. The enhanced images showing the truth behind the doll's facade have been shared with law enforcement agencies and child protection organizations as an educational tool. This discovery reminds us that history is not always what it appears to be on the surface. Sometimes, the most innocent-looking artifacts can hide the darkest secrets. The little girl and her living doll from 1907 have finally had their story told, more than a century after that photograph was taken. Their suffering was not in vain if it helps us better protect children today. What started as a routine photograph restoration project became a journey into one of the most disturbing chapters of American family history. The researchers who uncovered this truth have given a voice to children who were silenced over 100 years ago.